Jeff Risley grew up on a farm in western Kansas, and he learned a long time ago that farming could be challenging. Now, as an adult, he has not forgotten farm life, which is why he is committed to finding new income opportunities for farmers like his family. Hi, I'm Dave Price. Jeff is the executive director of Renewable Energy Farmers of America. The organization is still pretty new. It just formed last year as a farmer and rancher-led organization that explores wind and solar's potential for farmers. What's a fit and maybe what isn't? And it's an organization that looks for compromise at a time that wind and solar face opposition in some places. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. We appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
You bet, Dave. I appreciate you inviting me.
So I've been struggling with, what do I ask this guy who is somehow this combination of business, journalism, marketing, energy, farming, and ranching? Like, what's the first question? How about why? You're like this giant stew pot of backgrounds and interest, right?
Very true. And, I don't know that I can say it was planned. It's mostly been accidental, but a happy accident. I mean, really,
Okay.
we're, just a little bit of background about me since you brought it up here, if you don't mind. I did start out as a farm kid. I mean, I grew up in western Kansas. We've got wheat. We had a ranch, farm in the family, still in the family.
Oh, nice.
And in fact, we've leased our ground to a renewable energy developer, along with hundreds of others in a 3-county area for potentially really large wind, solar, and storage projects. So I always tell everybody I've been eating my own cooking when it comes to advising on renewable energy. So yeah, I started there, and even though I didn't stick to farming, I've stayed close to our family farm, of course. And when this opportunity to start REFA came up, I thought, like you, hey, this is a nice combination of my interests. So I jumped in.
What's your family operation still like in western Kansas? What's the day-to-day there?
Yeah, so my parents have retired, and we are currently leasing it out to another young farmer who's doing a great job.
Nice.
It's wheat, definitely Milo in certain circumstances. He's trying some dry land corn. All of our stuff is dry land. We have no irrigation.
Okay.
And we used to run a lot of cattle, more than I enjoyed, but we don't do that anymore. So that's the basics of it.
Do you wish you still did right now?
I'm sure my dad does. He likes to keep a couple head around for pets, I think, more than anything. But now would be a nice time to. But I still got family out there. My brother-in-law has a cow calf operation, and so it's still doing well for those folks right now.
I say this a lot for guests like you, but that has to be great for you in this role, your current role. Because, I mean, they're sort of your test case examples about life, right? And you do practice what you preach, since the family farm is heavily focused on renewables as well. How does that keep you connected?
Well, mostly out of self-interest, right? Because we want what's best for our farm and our operations, just like I want what's best for our members' farms and operations as well. And we went through all the same conversations that we're helping members go through as they're evaluating these renewable energy opportunities. And so it's helped me see it from a very direct perspective, right? I'm not just doing this because I'm getting paid to. I'm doing it because I have a personal interest and because I've seen what's happened to family farms over my 58-year lifetime. I mean, it's crazy how different it is today than it was when I was growing up. And it's not like it's gotten any better. I mean, the last 5 years, maybe the last 3 years have been really tough economically. I mean, the stories from talking to our members and even non-members, it's tough out there. So we've always said, hey, renewable energy doesn't fit everywhere all the time. It just doesn't. There's too many different operations, too many different land, situations out there. But it can absolutely be considered and should be, because that's innovation money. That's an opportunity for landowners to have this income stream that's predictable. and stabilizing and something you can pass on to next generations. So it's become a really important adjunct to, a lot of landowners.
What's Colorado all about? How have they? I think growing up, I grew up in St. Louis, so it's an easy drive out west. And over the years, we were out there a few times. And now, as a parent, we've been out there for vacationing and uh, a baseball trip, which was fun with my son and brother one time. But I think of Colorado as, compared to Iowa, God bless this state, but, geographically, Iowa and Colorado are quite a bit different. So you think about outdoors and mountains and all this stuff, right? How is that state viewed renewables in particular? What do you have going on there?
Well, so yeah, as you said, I'm actually headquartered here in Denver, although the association is headquartered in Illinois. And I can explain that later. But to answer your question, Colorado's fairly progressive when it comes to renewable energy. It has been for some time. It's got renewable energy goals. It's got, carbon reduction goals for the state. And so renewables have actually been, pretty, they've been developed pretty well here. We've got a lot of wind in the eastern plains, as you would expect, and we're seeing a lot more solar development happening. There are some pockets in Colorado, just like every state, where counties are either putting in long-term moratoria or bans, which we're not in favor of. That takes away opportunities for farmers and ranchers. But more than most, Colorado is embracing renewables. Even the Colorado Electric Transmission, CETA, I'm saying that authority, CETA, Colorado Electric Transmission Authority, has been established to also help uncongest, the different transmission congestion points we have in the state. So that's a big part of what needs to happen in a lot of places as well.
One of the things that I mentioned, I'm in the state of Iowa, our legislature, as we talk here in March, has been going through a bunch of different things. One of the things is that one of the big energy companies here has agreed to, like on top of the wind turbines, the flashing red lights to help aircraft and such. They are working to change how all that works, essentially with sensors. I'm not sure I'm smart enough to really explain this, but I think it sort of works with a sensor, so it's not flashing red all night long, which is what some of the people on the countryside have complained about, right? And that is one of those, I'll call it voluntary. I'm sure it came with a number of discussions, but that is one thing they are doing to try to ease some of the complaints about where wind is going and some of these sort of organized local, if you will, efforts to try to get a moratorium passed or what have you, or just kill wind almost altogether. I'm just curious if you're seeing anything like that in other states as a way to try to chill people out on some of their opposition.
Yes, is the short answer. In fact, I'm familiar with the Iowa legislation. We've followed that. We've actually been part of a collaborative of stakeholders working on that legislation. I know we've submitted a lot of suggested amendments to that legislation. And that's a great example of one of those things that we'll call it common sense. I mean, we're looking for our members and our board leadership is looking for objective standards. How can we make sure that reasonableness is put into either state policy or local policy? And a lot of states are considering a lot of different situations, right? There's hundreds of bills that were introduced last sessions in the states and in this session that's coming up or is going on right now. So some are very proactive in encouraging renewables. Some are completely shutting them down. Missouri, in fact, where you grew up, there's a bill that would put a moratorium on solar statewide. In fact, even those under construction. So there's reasonableness in some places, and then there's just flat out opposition in others. And our position is, look, let's not put up artificial barriers to infrastructure that is beneficial not only to landowners, but to communities as well. I mean, these rural communities are suffering just like the landowners are. So these projects represent millions of dollars in tax benefits, community benefit agreements in a lot of cases. That's an opportunity that needs to be explored, not shut down.
How are you viewing the expansion of data centers? As we talk about organized opposition, we are seeing some of that. Obviously, in some cases, you have landowners who turn down a substantial amount of money from a company that wants to do a data center because they don't want it converted away from farmland. How does your organization follow the data center drama?
Yeah, we do, but we don't have official policy position on it. It's not something our members have come to us with or asked a lot of questions about. There are definitely scenarios where data centers are getting, sited in rural America, but there's a lot of siting too in what I'll call more suburban hubs. So the debate hasn't come to our doorstep significantly yet. I will say it's different than renewables. I mean, think about it. If you're bringing power to a data center and you're bringing renewable energy to it, that's a great opportunity for the landowners that'll be near that data center. If you're not, you're putting in more of what we'll call permanent conversion of potential of farmland potentially, as opposed to temporary conversion. So that's partly why we've kind of focused on wind, solar, storage, agrivoltaics, and high voltage transmission, because those are things that can be used in conjunction with the land as opposed to urban sprawl.
Agrivoltaics, is that a sweet spot, do you see, as a way to kind of thread a needle with, you can still kind of do both things here, right? The solar production plus you still have the grazing opportunity or production?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, not only does it, help in that scenario from a just dual use standpoint, but it also eases the tension among community members. I think Michigan State did some research that said, 80, you'll go up to an 80% support for a project if it's actually an agrivoltaic project. But again, agrivoltaics doesn't work everywhere all the time. It's not the norm right now. It's just not. It's 99% of it is grazing, which is awesome. And most of that is sheep grazing, which is a great way to bring new farmers into, into the operations and to allow them to farm and ranch when they don't own land. So we're big supporters of agrivoltaics. We're just also supporters of the landowner making the best decision for their particular land, because agrivoltaics isn't working really yet for large row crops, for example. That creates a lot of different scenarios. It can absolutely work for cattle grazing. We've got members who are doing that. That's also an up and coming area, and we're encouraging our members and developers to explore it more, because we do think this is a great opportunity to kind of mix both professions.
You talked about storage. What is it going to take for that to really expand? Is that something where we need government incentives for the kind of the next build out? How do you look at that? Because that's the challenge, right? We need to store this stuff, because you have people who are critics about, what if the blades aren't going on a turbine, and what if it's cloudy outside and whatever, like how are we going to produce this stuff? But most importantly, it's storage, isn't it?
It is. That's absolutely right. And storage is booming right now. And there's already incentives for storage, federal incentives. Those storage, in fact, was where incentives were kept in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So there's definitely encouragement for storage, and it's taking off. I mean, it's rare now that developers aren't thinking about storage with all of their projects. So I think we're going to see significant amount of that build out in the next 5 years.
I would think a position like yours is fascinating. I've covered politics for a long time. And if you look at what this country has done, let's say for the last 20-ish years, we go in these wild swings where, it used to be maybe, you would kind of eventually transition. We put Republicans in charge for a while, and it takes a number of years, then we go Democrats. It feels like we have a change election every 2 years with these crazy wild swings. And I say crazy because it goes both ways. We put one party in control, we decide we don't like it, And we don't just nudge them out, we boom, make these huge changes. And it really almost is every 2 years we're doing this wild swings. So when you're so heavily involved in policy and working with landowners and producers who are trying to gameplay things out, how do you possibly adjust to all of that when the priorities are so different?
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, no business owner wants that kind of inconsistency, whether you're a farmer, rancher, or a developer. Nobody does. And it is crazy. We always say, I wish we could just get back to energy being boring again because, we need all forms of energy. Each has its place, and we don't need to be playing politics with all these different forms of energy. There's clearly benefits and detriments to all of them. So with the demand that we are projecting in the United States for electricity need, we shouldn't be saying no to anything. We should be citing things, objectively, thinking about our long-term needs as a country, and maybe making this a little less exciting and more just practical. So it feels big swings for sure at the federal level. The states are places where there's a little bit more of moderation happening, lots of policy, but there are some gamesmanship going on in different states as well. And then locally too, we've seen this dichotomy of, now we're up to, USA Today has just released its most recent research. We're up to close to 25% of counties in the United States that have some sort of restrictions on renewable development. So, right, that means 75% don't, but still it is a growing number from the 15% just 3 years ago or 2 years ago. So our advice is always the same, whether you're a local jurisdiction, the USDA, or a state legislature, is think about this from a practical perspective and not a political perspective. All our members are asking for is the opportunity. Don't shut out the opportunity, because there's so many ways that these projects can be made to work to benefit both the land, the landowner, and the communities, that we don't need government telling those communities and landowners what to do. They can make good decisions on their own.
That 25% that you cited, what's driving that? Is it locally based where maybe there's some wind opposition, wind concerns in a certain place, and it's solar over here, storage over here, whatever? Or is it more of a concentrated, we don't like renewables, let's stick with where our country has been primarily for years? What's driving that?
I need to dig deeper into USA Today's research. Elizabeth Weiss has done an amazing job with this. She's the reporter on it. My basic understanding is that it's for a variety of reasons, but it's a lot more on the political side than anything else. And I think when you look under all of that, it's about change. So if you think about what's occurred in our lifetimes, wind's been around 20, 30 years now. So it's not like it's been a mainstay in rural America forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't, it wasn't as big an impediment on land in terms of an impact. So it was more of an aesthetic type of thing. Well, solar has just taken off. So now you're adding a whole new dynamic to a community from a change perspective that can seem very scary. So most local communities are looking at this as, wow, my view shed is different. I don't know if I like or trust any of this in my community. What's our community getting out of this? Where's that power going? And they're thinking about it from a very closed mindset as opposed to an opportunity mindset. And what we're trying to encourage communities to do with our landowners is think about how you can take advantage of these projects and the millions of dollars that could potentially benefit your schools and hospitals and other things, so that you can get in front of it. Get in front of it and do what we call community benefit planning, and set up ways that you're talking about how this particular project or projects can help our community meet its needs long term, as opposed to whether we should have a project or not. that's the shift, the mind shift we would hope that a lot of communities are taking.
So would most of your work then right now be focused on states that you said have been more, you've seen more moderation there rather than the wild swings on the federal level, or is it because of the overall federal policy that that still has to be the focus?
Yeah, the answer is we've focused more in our advocacy services at the federal and local levels, simply
Okay.
out of practicality. We're a small team.
Hmm.
And so our ability to work with coalition partners on things like Farm Bill or USDA policy is greater than it is, separating ourselves across all these states. And then at the local level, we're very much able to help our members when they're facing ordinances that are restrictive or amendments to existing ordinances that create shadow bans. We can do a lot more to help in that scenario. We haven't quite dialed in yet. We're fairly new, so we just launched last year. So we're not quite dialed in yet on how to make as big an impact at the state level. But advocacy is just one of four different kind of service areas that we have. We're also big on the education, webinars, answering questions. We have Aggie. Aggie is our AI knowledge base, Dave. So we have been curating this thing with research and articles and all kinds of information right at that interconnection of ag and renewables so that we can answer any question anybody throws our way. We're also big on peer-to-peer networking. So in fact, just today, I was putting one of our members who has been through a renewable energy development process in touch with another member who is facing a lot of community opposition. And I know those two can help each other a lot more. That's what they want. They want to talk to other landowners that have been through it. And then lastly, we do a lot of technical services like non-legal lease reviews. We can do analysis of parcels. So if you came to me with 5 parcels somewhere in Missouri and you wanted to know what's the buildability opportunity here, we can help you analyze all of that. And now you're armed to take that to a developer and say, hey, look, I know a lot about my land and how you're looking at it as well. Let's talk.
One of the things that, I come at this as an outsider. So I grew up, I always say on the Illinois side of St. Louis, because I grew up on the Illinois side, the southwestern side of Illinois, where we lived really, really close to corn, but I didn't have any immediate family members on a farm. Now, I married my wife who has extended family who still farms in a couple of different places in Iowa. And so one of the things as an outsider that I brought up several times here on the podcast is I'm trying to figure out where we're going. And I mean by that, in my state here in Iowa, it's a lot of corn and beans, right? You talked about wheat in Kansas, these sort of traditional commodity crops like this. And in so many times, I'm trying to figure out, like, how are these people going to sustain these livelihoods when they keep getting squeezed like crazy? And hey, maybe the current president's going to figure out some incredible trade deals that's going to open up, replace China, and we're not going to get steamrolled by Brazil and Argentina and all that. We're going to find some new markets out there who prefer us and prefer our products, and it's going to be great. But as you pointed out, we're going through this 3-year stretch that just sucks for so many people. And we're seeing a lot of the smaller and medium-sized family farms who are just thinking, gosh dang, like, what's the future here? And my kids don't want to be part of this. My grandkids don't want to be part of this, whatever. And I realize I'm sort of preaching to the choir with a guy who believes in renewables, but besides you, it's like, what else are these folks going to do? They have to find ways to bring in new income streams, whatever they are, if it's going to be increased markets and better prices or whatever, or they're going to have to dip their toe in something new. Like, I'm just really struggling to figure out what's the long-term play for a lot of these people. You know what I mean?
I do. And I wish I had the answer to the silver bullet answer to that. But gosh, I remember my dad just talking about how difficult it's been, his entire career. Even, when you don't control pricing, when you don't control the
weather.
markets, the weather, you don't control inputs, and the pricing on it.
Hmm.
It's really a tough business. It's a lifestyle more than anything. It's a tough business, and it works great when it works, but it doesn't when it doesn't. And that's why we've seen this shift to so many farm families now that have off-farm income. I
Yeah.
mean, think about how many have a spouse that works somewhere else, or the farmer's got a second job, or it's totally become that unless you can grow significantly. So consolidation is what's really happening to save these situations. That's why we are so encouraging of, look, you've relied potentially on underground energy and oil and gas. We've had that on our land
Hmm.
before. So why not above ground energy? And it's going to be growing a lot faster because it's the cheapest form of and fastest form of energy we can develop right now, wind and solar. So those opportunities are going to continue to be coming to rural America and to your farm. Our landowner members talk about how often they get hit up by developers to lease their ground. So it's not going to slow down. So arm yourself, educate yourself, let us help you make a good decision. Because if you can do this, this is 30 years of income, and it could be significantly higher profit per acre than any crop you've ever grown. So short of that and adding a lot of cattle to the mix right now, if you've got
Hmm.
a ton of cash and
Yeah.
a great banker, I'm not sure.
All right. So as you look at the rest of 2026, what's your biggest focus?
We're focused on a couple of things. Number one, it's membership growth. So we've got members in 26 states now. We obviously want to have members in all
Yeah.
50,
Halfway
and we
home.
want to go, yep, we want to go as deep as possible too, because for us, our primary benefit to these landowners, yes, the services are great, but their ability to network with one another is huge. We've got a private online community that our members are talking in. It's kind of like a private Facebook. That's that's helpful. It's cathartic. It's very good. So that's our number one goal, is growing that. I think number two is making sure that we are integrating as deeply as possible with the ag NGO community, farm bureaus, National Farmers Union. In fact, I'm going to the National Farmers Union annual convention this weekend. The commodity associations, all of these long, long time trusted farmer voices, all of extension. These are folks that can let those farmer and rancher landowners know that we exist. So we don't have massive budgets to be out there, marketing across the country. So I think building those relationships with the ag community is where we're really focused as well. So those are our two biggest things.
But listening to what you just said there, like that fascinates me because that shows the, social media. We all know what that is, and you use Facebook as an example here. Well, maybe in the creation of Facebook, it once was kind of a great way to, I connected with high school classmates from years and years ago, and family members who don't live in the same state, and friends who've scattered all over the country and all that stuff. And of course, now we see how the algorithms will connect all kinds of stuff, and it's just the rage bait stuff and all that. But I would assume, though, it's very, very important for people to have an outlet. Maybe they live in Western Kansas and nobody around them is looking at a project, but somebody in Colorado did, or somebody in Indiana did, or something like that. Like that sort of maybe micro community has to be
Yep,
especially valuable, whether you're already into it or at least thinking about it.
exactly right. That's exactly right. That's why our membership, the only folks that can be members are landowners. And you can either be already hosting a renewable project. We charge $50 a year if you've got a project, because we want as many of you as possible to be ambassadors. You can be a tire kicker. You're just out there kind of looking around. Maybe you think you've got a potential for a project, charge $75 a year for that. And then our kind of full service is $250 a year. And it's for somebody that's likely got a lease just handed to them. They need advice on it. They may be already in a lease right now and want to ask about what construction's going to be like. So we're trying to go, in all three of those areas, whatever kind of stage of the journey you are in with as a landowner, we can accommodate that for that very reason. That network is really critical.
Jeff, we appreciate the time and thanks for the insight. Look forward to connecting with you again sometime soon.
Yeah, great, Dave. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
He is Jeff Risley, Executive Director of the Renewable Energy Farmers of America. He's also a Kansas Jayhawk, and I'm so proud of myself as a proud alum of the University of Missouri for keeping our conversation civil. Just kidding, but we do remember that old Big 8 rivalry back in the day. All right, to learn more about Jeff, to learn more about the Renewable Energy Farmers of America, just check out our profile piece. You will find it in the American Farmland Owner newsletter. It is free and it comes out every Friday. It's the place where landowners get their news. You can find it now at AmericanFarmlandowner.com. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.